welcome to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. This week we shall be discussing the happenings in Parliament. For that I have with me a very good panel. I have Virendra Kapoor, political analyst, Manish Tewari, national spokesperson of the Congress Party, Sambit, Patra, national spokesperson for the BJP, and Manu Sundaram, national spokesperson for the DMK. First, Manish, I'm going to begin with you. We've seen rhetoric return to Parliament after a long time, at least over the JNU matter. But will this continue? Do you think the opposition and the government can work together?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, whether the opposition and the government can work together. There are two distinct issues out here. First, of course, is the legacy of the previous 10 years. It hangs very low and very ominously over Parliament, because the manner in which the current government, when they were in opposition, set a precedent of wiping session after session. So therefore, there is a long shadow which is cast on the functioning of the current Parliament.
That doesn't give you a leeway to do the same.
Number two, it is the responsibility of the government to run the House. The Minister for Parliamentary Affairs, the Prime Minister, are charged with the responsibility of running the House. They need to reach across the aisle. They need to talk to the opposition and ensure that the House functions smoothly. If the attitude is my way or the highway, then obviously it will be the highway.
Is your attitude my way or the highway, or do you think this time the government has made some sort of overtures to the opposition?
Priya, I would say this is the oft-used excuse. Whenever the House is in disruption and you ask any opposition member as to why the House is not functioning, then the oft-used excuse is it's the responsibility of the government to see to it that the House functions. I would step a further ahead and say, well, in pen and paper, that's what must have been written in the Constitution. But it is responsibility of every member of Parliament to see to it that they put across the views of the people whom they represent. The Prime Minister has spoken on the floor of the Parliament saying that every member of Parliament is responsible towards the constituency from which he or she gets elected. So disrupting the Parliament means disrupting the flow of ideas of the people that they represent. Secondly, as far as reaching out to the opposition is concerned, I believe last time we had a chai pe charcha. Sonia ji, Rahul ji had chai pe charcha with the Pradhan Mantri, but to say that we have not invited them for tea is absolutely wrong. We have invited them for chai pe charcha, and that was a good one. But remember, last time the disruptions were because of National Herald case, which the government had nothing to do with. It was a court matter, it was a legal issue. And today we have disruptions over a major issue called as the JNU issue. So naturally, even that is sub judice. Ishrat Jahan, well, yes, today the truth is coming out in the open. So why not debate and discuss rather than disrupt?
Before I bring Manu in, Virendra, how do you see that, the JNU issue?
First, there is a fallacy in what Manish says, and most Congress leaders say that if the responsibility lies with the government side to run the House, that means they were totally in the wrong when you saw the maximum number of disruptions when they were in power. I don't think so. So you can't at the same time blame the present ruling party and absolve yourself of what happened then. The point is that you had maximum number of scams, and some of the scams which didn't come out are now coming out of the UPA. And that is why what is spurring disruptions at that time. Now you haven't had any scam of that order. Yes. You still want to, this tit for tat must have some basis for doing this. The fact remains that the Congress till the other day was not reconciled to the loss of power. And that's, and Rahul Gandhi is a work in progress. Whenever
well, he came up with a very good finished speech yesterday.
Yeah, maybe he's changed his script writer. But it reads, he accuses Modi of Jumlabazi. I think yesterday's speech was only Jumlabazi, fair and unlovely.
And these things work. Before I bring Manu, Manish wants to counter that. You also, you've been got into this tit-for-tat politics now that you've, I think, nearly tied up with the Congress in Tamil Nadu. The revelations on Ishrat Jahan, the case against Chidambaram, how is that affecting? And do you see a coalition happening, AIDMK, BJD and TMC against the divide in the opposition?
Let me address it in two ways. Firstly, the larger issue of parliamentary disruptions. Coming from a minor party, and now that I've heard the two major political parties and their views, I feel that the parliamentary setup itself needs to be substantially changed so that smaller parties and their voices can be heard. And
which is why we called you here today.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate it. And like Mr. Sambit Patra was just saying, if we need to be, if an MP needs to be true to his constituency, then does that individual member of parliament, be it from a smaller party or even an independent MP, does he or she have the power to bring about a discussion or a motion? No. The answer is that Parliament is still run by a brute majoritarian sort of influence, and we see Lok Sabha in many cases, people are thrown out, and that's not very good for democracy.
But once again, they have only 44 MPs, and yet it's not really brute majority, but yet they are making the voices heard. So if you want to, you can.
No, certainly. So what I'm saying is, when smaller parties and MPs are allowed to bring about, so you do, what I'm trying to say is that the procedural aspects of parliaments do need revision.
Okay,
but on your larger political question, I do see that there is a hint or a whiff of a sort of a tacit alliance between even the BJP and the ADMK. I mean, the day that a major issue against the minister Smriti Irani was supposed to come up, ADMK suddenly jumps into the well and breaks up an issue against a member who's not even part of the houses. So I think these are all sort of alliances in progress, in the works, maybe looking towards Tamil Nadu 2016 or even India 2019. So we'll have to wait and watch there, I think.
Okay, Manish, we've had two big debates, Ishrat Jahan and JNU. What the opposition scored in the JNU debate have you lost on the Ishrat Jahan debate?
Let me take the point which our good friend for the DMK is making. He's absolutely correct. There needs to be a substantive amendment to the 10th schedule to ensure that the voice of an individual MP is heard. When I was in Parliament in the last term, I had in fact moved a private member's bill to relax the rigors of the 10th schedule. Number two, coming to the point which Mr. Virendra Kapoor was making, the fact is that the BJP never reconciled itself to the loss of power. It is not that the Congress did not reach out across the aisle or the UPA did not reach out across the aisle. I can chapter and verse recite the number of instances where the then government reached out across the aisle, and so therefore, that's a fallacious argument for the lack of a better word. Number three, coming to the entire Ishrat Jahan issue. See, this government is setting an extremely bad precedent of trying to use retired and serving officers to undermine the governance paradigm. The statement which the former Home Secretary made, G.K. Pillai, that intelligence organizations function in this manner outside the pale of law, is outrageous for the lack of a better word. And that's the reason why I had moved a private member's bill to bring intelligence organizations under parliamentary oversight. And number four, you see these oft-repeated scams which they talk about. Has there been a single conviction in any matter?
So therefore, you lost an election for that.
You lose an election for various reasons, right? So after all, there is also a 10-year fatigue. You already see a 20-month fatigue with this government setting in. So allow the courts to come to some conclusion before you pontificate and say that 10 years, all that had happened was scams. So therefore, I think if this government wants the House to function, which I don't think that they do, because given the very confrontationist attitude they have adopted, I think there would be difficulties with regard to the budget also.
Wow, that's a big statement. Why is the honeymoon period getting over so soon?
It's better that the honeymoon is over. Why should one be staying in the dreamland? Performing and letting the people lead a better life is what our aim was. So we never were and we never wanted to be in the honeymoon period. It's always work, work and work for this government. Okay. But let me just speak on a few points that was elaborated by Manish ji. Number one, he speaks about the fact that courts did not in fact indict on the scams that we are talking about. Let me also remind him of the fact that the courts in fact went ahead to cancel most of the allocations that were done on the coal and other spectrum allocations, and this government has brought in profit to that extent. So naturally it vindicates the stand of the Bharatiya Janata Party. Now what we had been doing during that tenure, compare it with what's the cause of disruption during this period. But I would say that with a pinch of salt, that this kindergartenly attitude should stop. You ate my tiffin box, so I'll not allow you to finish your tiffin box. Something which is quite kindergartenly, and people of this country will not take it quite seriously and will not excuse you for disrupting the parliament now. We stood up then only because the CAG, the courts, they spoke against various, spoke about various scams. Secondly, sir was speaking about amendment. Even Manish echoed the sentiment that there should be amendment in the functioning of the Lok Sabha where the smaller parties are allowed to come up. Remember a few days ago, there were a few articles also echoing the sentiments of Mr. Jaitley when Jay Panda had written in the Times of India and suggested that the Rajya Sabha's way of functioning should be amended because Rajya Sabha is the place where most of the voices, the din is present. And
I can see why you would agree with Jay Panda.
And no, it's not that issue. But the problem was the privilege motion was passed against Jay Panda in Rajya Sabha by the Congress. Over here you state that there should be amendment where the smaller parties are heard, and then you move a privilege motion against Jay Panda, who was saying exactly the same that you are propagating now.
No, allow me to clarify that. There's a huge distinction between what I was propagating and what Jay Panda is saying. Jay spoke about the emasculation of the Rajya Sabha. He spoke about making the Council of States a subordinate house. And that is why it was objected to and a motion was moved. And let me also quickly rebut the coal point. You see, when the Supreme Court intervened and cancelled the licenses, they cancelled allocations going back to 1993. How many tenures did it cover? Narasimha Rao, Devagowda, Inder Gujral, Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee for 6 years, and then finally Dr. Manmohan Singh's tenure from 2004 to 2009.
Okay,
so therefore, you know, if coal allocations or cancellation of coal allocations is the benchmark, then they are equally in the dock.
Cancellation went up to Vajpayee's period, but he is concealing the fact that it was 2005 when the auction module was brought in, and despite Mr. Manmohan Singh having at his disposal that module, he did not, or rather conveniently choose not to follow the auction module, and that's why they are the ones who are we are pointing fingers towards.
I completely understand that, and everyone here, I think, also appreciates that the Parliament needs to function as well as it can.
Right.
But you know, even as a neutral observer, sometimes I've felt that in the last 1 year we've seen a greater inability to run Parliament. And I just want to quote two examples. One is specifically this time last year when the CPM moved amendment to the motion of thanks in the President's address, and which was carried through in the Rajya Sabha, right? And that was a bit of an embarrassment to the government. But not only that, even when the DMK Member of Parliament Tiruchi Shiva brought a private member bill, and traditionally private member bills are not passed in the House, and rather they've sort of withdrawn after a sort of an assurance is given. But I think these two specific incidents show that the government's parliamentary flow management has been lacking. There is room for improvement, and I think that's something that I hope the government takes not only for its own betterment, but for the rather better functioning of parliamentary democracy.
I just want to wade into this only one thing. Giving individual MPs freedom will be much worse. You can't manage parties just now, and look at the kind, and you want to, you know, let loose 750 guys who will do their own bidding. I don't think that we are at a stage where we can loosen control over parties' control. In his party, you know where the orders come from. BJP also. And you want to say every DMK will have 15 MPs and all 15 want to raise different matters in the national parliament? I think.
But 1950, Priya, to 1985, till the 10th schedule was made a part of constitution. Didn't Parliament function in this country? Individual members of Parliament had the right to vote according to their conscience, their constituency and their convictions. So therefore, when you talk about representing the voice of your constituency, I'm sorry, you cannot represent the voice of your constituency.
Manish,
the reason is because you have a whip-driven tyranny which makes the House function. So therefore, that is the reality.
Exactly, that's what was put forth by Jay
Who did
Panda.
that? What is the anti-defection
Come out of the
law
whip-driven
about?
tyranny
Exactly,
then, but that's
number
not the
one.
point of discussion today,
And
by the
let
way.
me tell you
Yeah.
that only private member will, that too was adopted by the government. Feroz Gandhi, when he raised this scam about, what is the scam, Dalmia scam, where TTK Krishnamachari lost his job, and not a word appeared next day, because he moved that he was shocked as a member who was a member of the ruling party. And he said, now whatever is said on the floor of the House can be reported without any criminal action visiting the media. But that bill also, private bill, was adopted by the government.
Virendra Kapoor raises the larger issue which I've always been agitating, that in India you have the freedom of the owner of the press and not the freedom of the press.
Regardless, even owner didn't have, because Ownerji also was interested.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Ownerji was also interested in spreading that news about the scam,
That
because
is exactly
Ownerji
what
was
I'm saying.
involved.
That's
Ownerji
exactly,
was involved.
that's exactly what I'm saying. In this country,
But it's
you do not have the freedom of the press. You have the freedom of the owner of the press.
Because the netas behave irresponsibly, at least we can now report truthfully in the media, thanks to that bill.
Well, that was not the only private members bill adopted. The first private members bill adopted before Trichy Shiva's bill got adopted was actually on the abolition of sati.
Okay. Well, we have a rare moment where Manish Tewari and Virendra Kapoor are agreeing, but we need to take a short break. But stay with us. Welcome back to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. We are here debating Parliament. Virendra, can I bring you in this? We've seen, for instance, Smriti Irani's speech raised, why was it a success in one house and not such a big success in the other house? Is it because the Congress got its act together?
Yes, maybe there's a question of numbers to begin with.
Fair enough.
They have superior numbers in the Rajya Sabha.
But the strategy, they walked out in the Lok
If they
Sabha.
accuse the ruling party, BJP, of tyranny of numbers in the Lok Sabha, they've been using that in the Rajya Sabha. I mean, there is that shows the disjunction between the two houses. In fact, the people's mandate, they should be a little more accommodative because members in the Rajya Sabha, they should be considered. The fact is the mandate is with the ruling party, BJP. Blocking it all the time, as he just said that about some member in the president's address last year.
Yeah.
This is not a done thing. That's unusual. In fact, I don't approve of what the CPIM did, that it was carried out. They knew it in any case. It's notional. But still they went ahead. Why use your numbers for these kind of gimmicks?
Okay, so let Sambit come in, then you can take both on.
In fact, the point is Smriti Irani's speech being successful in one house, and you're saying that she was
Not so successful in the
not
other.
So I would say that she was beaten by the din on the other in the other house. That I mean, the
Well, you got what you gave in one house.
voice of the opposition, in fact, outshouted. No. If you go by the vision of the common man, the man wants, well, there is a set of questions which the opposition is asking. The man wants to get the sense that the government is having, and at the end of the day, the common citizen wants to reach a conclusion, whether it is right or whether it was wrong. But are we, as a government and as the opposition, giving this opportunity to the common man? I would say absolutely no. Though thanks to the media that this event in Parliament, each day, each hour, is reaching to the common man. But the problem is, because of the behavior within the Parliament, the man is not able to conclude. Look, what Smriti did in Lok Sabha was the way it should be, in the sense that she spoke the whole content out. Rahul Gandhi ji and Sonia ji should have stayed back, should have questioned her, should have been answered, and that's the way as to how people would have concluded. Okay. But the irony is, all of them walked out. The next day in Rajya Sabha, the strategy was not to allow the truth to go out for a second time. They wanted to suppress it all by the din, and they did it. They are only 44, yet their shouting is heard, I would say. It's not voices. Voices are heard in silence and governance. Shouting is heard in the din.
Well, that's really rich. Coming from a party whose current finance minister had articulated that position, that disruption is a legitimate parliamentary tactic. And I recall the BJP actually walking out on the finance minister's budget speech in the year 2010 or 2011, if I correctly recall. The current president, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, was delivering his budget speech, and the BJP walked out in the budget speech. So therefore, who are they to pontificate and lecture anybody on disruptions and walkouts? If they walk out, it is kosher. If somebody else walks out, it is unparliamentary. You can't.
But
you
that's
can't
how
hunt.
it works when you are in government and they are in
but Priya, you
opposition.
can't hunt with the hare and run with the hound.
But
so therefore,
it's a tactical mistake for the Congress to walk out and not take them on as they did in the Rajya Sabha.
Absolutely not. You see, therefore, that's why you have two houses of parliament. Something gets said in one house, something gets said in the other house. The Rajya Sabha is the Council of States, and the members are elected by elected legislators who are chosen by the people. So therefore, this is a completely fallacious argument that one house represents the will of the people and the other house is a retirement home.
Yeah, but I do think that it's not okay. But I think when the sanity returns to Indian politics, they might want to relook at the role of the Rajya Sabha.
You think Jay Panda has a point?
Yeah, of course he has.
It's across the globe now.
Let me tell you, in many states, you have a unicameral structure. In many other states, you have a bicameral structure, and both work equally well. You have a parliamentary system in which there is a Council of States. Just because you don't have a majority, that doesn't mean that you abolish the Council of States.
My answer to that is eventually no system can work if people lack maturity. And if your rulers lack maturity, when I say ruling class, opposition is part of the ruling class, the establishment, the larger establishment. If they don't have the majority, no system can work.
Absolutely, majority cuts across on all sides.
Let's look at it
That's
in a very
something we
simple
agree
way.
on.
As far
Of course,
as Rajya Sabha is
quick
concerned,
answer.
in 2014, the Bharatiya Janata Party came in full-fledged majority in the Lok Sabha. That was the mood of the people. Rajya Sabha was continuing with the majority of the parties, which in fact people did not want to come. But since the system is such that they would continue, they were continuing. Naturally, if the Bharatiya Janata Party could not implement what it had promised in the manifesto just because some of the Rajya Sabha members were still continuing from the past regime, naturally that is not the mood of the people. I mean, this is the simplest way I can
That
put
is
the
the
things.
mood of the
Mood
constitution.
of the people.
Fair enough.
Priya, that's not the way democracy works. Democracy
No, the
works
world has
by
amended
the
itself.
democracy works by reaching across the aisle. Democracy does not work on brute majority. Democracy works by working with other institutions, whether it is the judiciary, whether it's the media. You saw an attempt made by this government to emasculate the judiciary. How strongly was it repudiated? You know, when you try to emasculate the educational institutions, see how strong the
On
pushback
judiciary,
is.
you are the
So
guilty
therefore,
party.
so therefore, there is.
You started that bill. In fact,
Therefore,
you fathered that bill.
No, it actually goes much further back.
Yeah,
So
but
if
still,
you actually
but
go back
you were
into
party to
history,
that.
it goes much further
were
back
party
to
to that.
Mr. Jaitley's time as law
But you were
minister. So
also-
therefore, let's not get into that. So let's not go. I can go into the entire history of it. So ultimately, you have to work with the institutions. As I said, if you wanted my way or the highway, then you're going to get the highway.
Look, Priya, just
On
10
that note,
seconds.
I have to
Priya,
finish, yeah.
10 seconds. They wanted that. The government should walk across to the opposition and should offer a fig leaf. What did they expect in the National Herald case? What kind of fig leaf should have been offered to them? Why did they disrupt the parliament when it was a legal issue? What kind of fig leaf is my question?
It is political vendetta. It's not a legal issue.
So-
they'll be laughed out of court.
So should we
and
have-
after all, Subramaniam Swamy is a BJP member.
No,
He's not a
political
member of the
vendetta, the
DMK
court
or
could
the
not see it, you mean to
AIDMK
say?
or for that matter any other party.
Okay.
You know,
If
I want to
it
say
is
this on the-
politically inspired litigation.
that increasingly as
The
the
court could not
parliament...
see that?
The court will see it
You
ultimately.
see that as
The
well.
court
You
will
see
see
that
it
as a separate
ultimately.
issue.
Okay.
You're going to have egg
Increasingly
on
as
your
the
face.
parliament becomes dysfunctional, and I don't see any sign of reconciliation between the opposition and the ruling party. I mean, this is a systemic problem where the ruling party will find increasingly to get around extra parliamentary ways and use the executive action, rule by executive action, and making parliament irrelevant. You know, you will not have fresh legislation for
Giving
want
more
of
teeth to
numbers
the
in
court.
Rajya Sabha.
Huh.
So they'll still have to go on without going to
Viren-
parliament.
but Viren-
This is unfortunate,
No, but Viren-
but this is not
But-
how the
but-
founding fathers wanted it.
but-
Okay,
But
we are
these
going to
fellows are
now-
making
But
it happen.
Viren, there is only a limited amount that you can do by executive action. You
Yeah,
try
but
and
they'll
rule.
still have to. They'll still have to.
You try and rule by Article 72 of the Constitution.
Yeah.
You will get thrown out by the courts.
No,
So
but they'll
therefore,
still have
you
to.
will have to make Parliament function, and that is the responsibility of government.
Make Parliament function. I'm sorry, I wanted to give you the last word, but we're really out of time. So make Parliament function, less tit for tat politics and more chai pa charcha like this.
Thank
But
you.
that's all from us now. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for watching this
Bye.
roundtable. We'll see you again same time next week.